in addition to OPA, I am a member of a couple of other astrological groups, including NCGR and ESAR. My background is a 30-year corporate background where I did human capital management through management, leadership, executive training, frontline training. I spent almost 30 years in the finance industry and a few years in healthcare. And I find that modern astrology is very closely aligned, right, to helping people move forward in their development and achieve their goals. So it was a natural fit. So I'm going to break this down into sort of three things. I'll share this with you. Then, Dorje, I'm going to ask for let's snap the chalk line on the poll data and see what's coming in. But in terms of everybody's comfort level with the poll that you took. But I want to really just chunk this into what's the premise of AI, which is really intended to help those who are nervous about it, haven't really used it at all, aren't sure if they want to use a new technology because they're like, okay, what's the difference, right? So we'll talk about what's the premise. We'll examine the promise of what we're finding it delivers, what people are saying it delivers, and how its delivery continues to build rapidly over time. And then my goal is to leave you with something useful today. So there's a practical reality when it comes to navigating and effectively using AI. In the practical reality, I'm going to give you a couple of things that make up a good prompt. I'm going to share with you my rules of the road, what I set up every AI platform to follow on the very front end of my rules. And I'm going to give you a guide to the various types of AI that exist and where some of their strongest alignment is in the work and the tasks that we do as astrologers. Okay, great. So, Georgie, I can see polling results. So, we asked the question, what's your AI experience? And it looks like the majority of our folks are, I love it and I use it all the time. And then we do have a couple of folks, about, a dozen. I'm a beginner and I like the idea, or AI is scary, help me understand it. Very fair, right? So, what I'll say is to my folks who love it and use it, some of this front end stuff might feel like a bit of a refresher for you. Hopefully, the back end stuff that I share with you will augment your usage and what you do already. For those who are either scared or they like the idea of it, but they're not sure, I think that you'll find probably the first part of this more helpful. But at the end, I'm going to leave all of you with three what I call mini tasks that you can try. It's a task associated with astrology. I outline which model to go to, and then recommend how to use it. So let's go ahead and jump in. So first things first, this is my disclaimer slide. I use AI in everything. And because of that, I'm very transparent about it. But at the end of the day, everything I produce, everything I deliver, everything I trademark is my final product. I do not let AI complete A to Z any of my work. In my house, it's kind of a running joke. I often fight with my AI when it goes further than it should. But I use it and I use it ethically. And so I share that with people because all of us need to be sharing when we're using it. The second part of this disclaimer is about me and the shelf life of this presentation because it's going to live in perpetuity, right, out on YouTube. And so at the end of the day, I am, an educated, informed, strong user of AI. I do not consider myself an expert. I do think we now have some experts out there that have put their Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hours in, but there aren't a lot of them. And I think what people are finding is that there's technical expertise, which brings one kind of value, and there's practical expertise, which is marrying the technology capability with what you want it to do to help you in your job and in your life. And that's the strength that I bring. Um, Everything in here, frankly, is likely to be outdated in the next couple of months, right? So here's the first piece of information I want to share with you about AI. The reason I say comfortably that this will be outdated and I'm not bothered by it is AI is growing and evolving so quickly. It's unlike anything else we've ever seen evolve in human history that we've tracked. And so there is actually a technology benchmark that has been used for decades, and it's called Moore's Law. And the principle is that you could count on computing technology doubling in capability every 2 years. So if you think back to the early days of using computers, PCs, um, new versions came out, right? Software capabilities grew and new releases happened. And with each one of those, it required more of the machine, the device you were using, because it was going to do a bigger, better job of computing at the end of the day. And 2 years became a pretty reliable time metric. So right now, AI is doubling in capability every couple of months. So let that sink in for just a second. Before we started, someone asked about me getting into this, and I said I got into AI in 2022 when it started first becoming publicly available, and it's changed significantly since then. I was impressed with just the skin and bones, right, or the early sort of highly technical versions that came out. And my hope is that I'll be able to share some of my work product with you either during Q&A or as we go so you can see some of what you can do today. But if this is going to double in capability, then things I'm saying it can't do or doesn't do well today may not be true. Then the other thing that's going to happen is because the law and the governance of AI, and by the way, this is varied by country, is slow to catch up. So AI may do things today that in a few months are features and functions that have to be turned off because of regulatory bodies in various areas saying, we don't want AI that is capable of doing XYZ, right? Because there is a very real concern about um, uh, how much is too much, how far is too far, right? And that's where some of the fear comes from. So I'll touch on that a little bit more. But what I want you to know is that the biggest thing is it's not Google, it's not a search engine, it's nothing like that. And if you are or know someone who's using it that way, what they're really doing is burning through resources that they could just be doing on a search engine. And so my hope is that some of the prompting information that I give you will be helpful. But the biggest aspect of AI as we see it now that I want everybody to understand is that it's generative context based. It is like having a conversation, and that's how you should interact with it at the end of the day. And all that stuff is contained, and you've probably heard the lingo for an LLM, a large language model. That's essentially what I call the brain of AI, right? So that brain has been developed and fed information, given access to certain sites or sources, in other cases, maybe limited from those sources, and likely given a set of rules to follow. It learns by constantly consuming content. As I said, some of that's directive. Some of these tools have sort of what I call free range, right? Where they go out and they crawl the internet every so often and they absorb everything they can about what's on the internet. That's sort of exciting and scary. Another way that the brain is developed, and one of the most important ways that all of us contribute to AI as users, is through human feedback. I can't stress enough how critical it is that we not forget there's a human in the loop of all of this. The AI is consuming everything that was once built by humans, and it is generating responses to our needs We need to praise it when it's right, and we need to correct it when it's wrong. And if you choose to ignore it when it's wrong, then what you're doing is akin to watching a child that you have do a chore wrong and then never addressing it, and then getting frustrated when you go find the chore has been done wrong. So, for any of you who've had kids, you know what I mean by this. What happens is the model, as it's learning more from different places, it continues to grow and learn like we do as humans. And I want to be careful about my language here. When I say like we do, I mean just as our brains grow and consume and expand and process, so do AI LLMs. And, no response sort of is a response. No response means, okay, our interaction is making sense and I don't see any errors here. So, the techie stuff that's happening in the background is everything it's crawling and taking, it's essentially monitoring patterns and likelihoods, creating weights associated with every word. And the earliest that we saw of this in technology was when we saw like a Google search, autocomplete, right? So if you started to type into Google today in Florida, a couple of autocomplete options would come up. And those autocompletes were because that's what was being searched, right? So it does some of that same learning, but on a massive scale. And then as it learns more about the user it's serving, so you, it continues to refine further. So my AI has its brain, but now it knows when it's interacting with me, I don't like fluff, get to the point, I want bullets, facts only, deep link everything. And when it's wrong, I say wrong. And I give it a thumbs down because that thumbs down is the system's way of saying, I need to let you know a correction is required. And so that interaction with it is really, really important. So imagine that you're working with a group of, call it tweens or teens, and they've gotten access to the internet and they're doing their first research report. And they go out and they start researching the 2016 US presidential election. And they're going to write a report based on their online research. And that's the only parameters they have. They're going to find information that's accurate and proven. They're going to find information that's been claimed but is unproven. And they're going to find information that is unproven. And unless you guide them, when I was growing up, we always had newspapers when I was a kid, right? And my grandfather would say, don't believe everything you read. Like, just because it's on paper and it feels official doesn't mean it's true. And that's when I started realizing there was opinion and bias. Of course, I didn't know what to call it back then, and what I was reading. Well, look at all the junk that's just out on the internet, right? That's kind of the beauty of it. There's some chaos that exists, but we have to keep in mind that AI is consuming the chaos and it's weighting that information in some way. And the more wrong, chaotic information it finds without any directive from us, the human, the more that propagates, right? So that's kind of like the technical piece of how it works, it's set up. But if you want to know how to use it, I said it's not a Google search, right? The best thing I've read is from Ethan Malik, is a PhD. He's professor of innovation, business technology at the Wharton School of Business. And because he's into innovation, he's done a lot of research on the front end of tech for a long time. He wrote a book a few years ago about co-intelligence and co-working with AI. And I thought it was really incredible because he based the research on what he saw having his PhD students do their work with it, right? So they learned really rapidly because the students were actually applying it, they were reporting their findings, et cetera. And he, in his book, said, listen, there is really a framework. Like, how do we work with AI? Now, I will tell you, Professor Malick's book will be in some ways totally outdated if you go get it, but it's still worth it. But I feel like the core model around what is there to gain? There's the 4 points listed here. So first of all, it can augment our capabilities. It can be a collaborator to us. It can help with personalization as it's acting as an extension of you. It's not going to do so in a generic way. It's going to learn your voice, your cadence, right, et cetera. And use them correctly and being transparent about that can help build trust in the technology. Where we're already starting to see pushback happen with not just AI, but frankly, broader technologies is I don't trust you, either because you give me information that's wrong, or you give me information that's biased, or you present something that you didn't tell me a research or a bot helped with, right? And so the other thing is, and I see here in the chat, how do I account for hallucinations? This is a great question. This is the reason you need to disclose use of AI. I'm also going to say you should never publish anything that you haven't yourself checked. But the most interesting and ironic thing you can do is go into any AI tool and ask it to show you its current hallucination rate. And you can ask any of the bots. And I like to ask for what are the current hallucination rates across the top 5 in use bots right now. And a hallucination is just an error. It's called a hallucination in this context because there's reasoning involved, meaning it's taken information, maybe the right information, and responded in the wrong way, or it's misinterpreted what you want and then gone and gotten the right answer to the wrong question, or there's so many pieces of conflicting information. The bot, which is like the brain, has to decide of all these things, here's the answer that's most probable based on my training and my token weighting. So I'm just going to tell that to you, but I'm not going to tell you I'm not 100% sure. So hallucinations happen. There are a couple ways that you can head them off. You can build some rules yourself. I'm going to show you today that you can head them off. And there's constant measuring of this across all of the tools. So the companies themselves, third-party companies get involved in some of this testing, and you can always go out and see the latest results. So you absolutely have to check everything. So thank you for that question. That was great. So the promise versus the reality. Look, there's a ton of overstated hype right now on both ends of the spectrum. Everything from every job's going to be replaced to it's conscious to AGI, augmented general intelligence is here. Look, certainly jobs are changing with AI. I don't want to act like this is just hype because while the quotes I have here are understated, the reality is that it is changing jobs. It's changing how companies look at jobs. It's changing how companies scale their employee base. I think, when you think about what AI really is, it's kind of the fifth industrial revolution, right? Ever since the locomotive, uh, this is amazing, right? You think back to, I have a friend who works at Microsoft and is in an AI group, and he likes to use the example of loomers, right? People who used to loom rugs and blankets by hands. When the looming contraption came out and they could suddenly do 5 in a week instead of 1 in a week, of course that created panic. It caused adjustments to how many people were needed for that kind of a task. I continue to be an optimist. It's not going to happen right away, but if you're telling me that I can have bots running numbers and I can have humans available and paid well for jobs that are needed with other humans, like teaching our kids, taking care of our elderly, helping grow food, all those kinds of things, then that's what I want our humans to be able to do. So it's not going to happen overnight. And it is going to continue to cause disruption. You know, the the utility is there though. What AI can give us is speed and structure, giving you back some time. I started encouraging my corporate team when they started using AI to repurpose that time for a wellness hour or to repurpose that time to go be able to see their kid's soccer game, right? So if AI can give you some space back in your life to take care of yourself and the people around you, well, then let it, right? Um, it can definitely allow you some leverage, particularly in the area of research, which I think it's incredibly helpful. But like I said, the big promise is more time for human connection. So that's the optimistic way to think about it. So we talked a little bit about hallucinations. Accuracy and ethics are a thing. Bias in, bias out is like garbage in, garbage out. Um, like I said, the model consumes everything, including bias. And it consumes a lot of stereotypes. And a lot of the training these models have had, and I think this is starting to improve. But to this point, a lot of the training has taken place by humans that are likely in a corporate setting, probably a male, with some sort of North American, right, affiliations. There's absolutely bias, and I see this getting better, right, because as it consumes everything again, it's just going to take it in and parse it and look at the probabilities and the odds and how the weighting is coming out, and it's going to declare things. Um, So you should know that even the most well-trained, accurate bot um, may interact in a way or give you information that's generic. And the other thing is it'll learn your bias. So my bots know, I shared a few things before, but they also know I'm inclined to curse. That's just how I talk. I'm not going to do that in this session because I don't want to offend anybody. But it is humorous to me when my AI sometimes responds with exuberance, and that includes some curse words. So it'll learn your bias. And so in astrology, I practice primarily modern astrology. I do modern, natal business relationship. I do some mundane, typically when I'm looking for something. I do elective. And if I'm writing an article or I'm building a product or I'm working on my marketing plan and I want to work with my bot as a coworker, it works with that context in mind. When I want to do something that may have a Hellenistic connection, or suddenly I'm looking at a client's chart where I say, I really need to go look at their lots and see where everything is here. I've got to then take myself into Hellenistic mode. And rather than pull out all my Hellenistic books to check my facts and make sure I'm correct, I can say to my AI, in Hellenistic astrology, there's the lot of spirit. um, Remind me what things the lot of spirit helps point to. And so your astrological lineage, you can tell it to operate in that lineage and its response, or you can tell it what your lineage is as the default. And even if you don't tell it, it will start to pick up on it. And you'll know because when it responds to you, it'll give you a response. And then it might say something like, do you want me to give you a summary of that from a mundane perspective? Right? That's when you know you've spent enough time with it. It really gets a feel for what you do and how you do it. But at the end of the day, I'll say it again, expect it to make mistakes because it will. Check everything before you produce it and protect yourself and your property. So there's credibility, there's clients, and there's data. And in a moment, I'll give you some additional thoughts on how to do that because it really boils down into this notion of privacy and intellectual property. So always anonymize or just don't include any details. The bot doesn't need to give you an answer to a question. Is it okay to copy and paste the synopsis of, say, chart data, right? So I take a person's chart and I've got a table showing what sign, degree, and house every planet's in. Can I drop that into my AI? Sure you can. But you don't need to tell the AI who that is, what it is. You can say, I'm looking at a chart and here's the detail. I'm seeing these things. Do you see anything you think I'm missing? And when it responds, even if I like what it says, I go, oh yeah, that is a good catch. I didn't see there was a yod in there, right? I am going to click on the deep link that I've asked it to provide me in my rules to show me evidence. So I want to I don't want to just say, oh yeah, I missed the yod, right? I want it to tell me it's a yod based on these planets in these configurations at these degrees. And the apex of the yod is pointing to the fourth house, which means X. That's a great answer. You should have two or three links there. In my case, because that's what I ask my bots to do, that show me how they know what the configuration of yod is, that show me what they've referenced to understand what the apex of a yod in the fourth house means, right? So these are, there's great opportunity to interact with AI for these things, but checking is absolutely positively always required. I often get the question, what about my work? If I work with AI, will it steal my work, right? How do I protect myself? Will it train other um, models, right, on my stuff? Listen, unless you're working under an enterprise or on a top tier subscription service for your AI, so most people will do as much as they can in free AI, which I recommend. All of these have free, you know, models. But most people end up with a subscription to one of them that they like. And there's different levels of subscriptions. But a lot of times your work is being used to train the model. So it's not just your conversation, but remember that giving it feedback when it gets it right and when it gets it wrong. That's why I want you to do it as you go, because the model is constantly being trained unless you're in an exclusive kind of pro level subscription or an enterprise tool, right? Where that's part of your company's rule that it's not included in training data. Um, if you don't have that, what I recommend is a basic protection for your work, especially if you're working on something important and unique. So I would say if you're writing a book, AI is a great assistant, but that's incredibly proprietary. Like you're going to write a book that you want to bring to market. You don't want the AI learning and consuming all of that. I wouldn't want that as I go. Because if I'm training it on my stuff that I haven't even published yet, it could be guiding others who are asking questions that are in the realm of this topic I'm writing my book on. So I would say use different AI bots. So, Google Gemini, ChatGPT, Perplexity, etc. Copy mark or trade right your intellectual property. And if it's something that you're, willing to stand up for or go to bat for, if there's an issue, make sure you're keeping some sort of a digital or paper trail outside of your AI. So I'm working on a book right now, and I have a notebook I keep. where the day I got the idea, I jotted it down. The day I built the structure out, I didn't write what the structure was. I jotted down, right, that I composed the structure. As I do each character development, I'm keeping track of that because if something were to happen where my proprietary information would get misused, I would want to know. So I know I'm going fast here because I know there's lots of Q&A. The big five, lots of AI out there, right? But the big five are what you see here. ChatGPT really set the pace. Google Gemini has now come up strong. And it's like a horse race for these providers, if we're being honest. They're constantly trying to inch each other out for the next version. Um, they are focusing more on accuracy, capability. We've gone from responses to true interactions to now agents that can do things on your behalf, which is amazing, amazing, right? So if you don't know where to start and you're saying, well, Holly, there's all this stuff out there. Where do I go? I would say it depends on what you're looking for, right? So what I tried to do was break down the five models into an overarching identity based on the sun, not their real birth date, just to be clear, because I've talked in other writings and podcasts about when these models were born. But as an astrologer using them, in a super user, you start to get to the core of what they're doing, which I think of as the sun sign. And then the ascendant, which is what we call the UX, the user experience. And then because AIs are built on LLMs, Mercury's the brain, right? So if you put all of these together, you start to see ChatGPT is really a seeker and it is a free range learner, right? It's out on the terrain constantly collecting. Google Gemini is this very well connected sort of knower. It knows where to go, it knows how to connect, it knows how to put things together. Not until the last 3 months did I find an AI that could read an ephemeris for me correctly, and Google Gemini was the first to get there. And it's because, believe it or not, bots do better with words because they're large language models than they do with pictures, tables. And so they're much better now than they used to be. Let me be clear. What they used to do is sort of see a picture, lift the data off of it, and parse that data in a way that it could make sense of. And oftentimes it would hallucinate because it wasn't making the right sense, right? So things are getting better, but these tools are constantly evolving. Believe it or not, Claude is the empath. Anthropic, which is the company that owns Claude, I think she's a chief ethics officer, and she is responsible. She does the one on one training with Claude on ethics. And they have been training Claude on this notion of empathy. And so, because of that, Claude outputs are distinctly different from some of these other models. ChatGPT can talk you up 6 ways to Sunday. Google Gemini can connect you to all the places about this thing that you've just started working on. Claude is really going to interact with you to understand what you want and who your audience is and deliver back to you in an empathetic context. For that reason, frankly, I love it for translating copious chart notes um, into, because my notes are typically, as I'm sure yours are, right? Short, to the point, bulleted, written all over a chart, wanting to be able to give my client a written version of that. If I were to just transcribe and hand over what I wrote down, it would come across as very like short and curt and direct. And if you put it into some of these other bots, it's going to be probably inflated and exaggerated, right? And so Claude does a good job of getting a good empathetic human voice. Perplexity, I will tell you all, is where I have my pro subscription. It's the analyzer. I do a ton of research, whether I'm writing truth or fiction. I oftentimes am referencing true historical context, even if it's in a sort of fictitious manner, like a novel or whatever. And so I love Perplexity because I can ask it to go out and research certain things for me. And again, if anybody wants to see it, I'll pull that up quickly during Q&A. And then Copilot, if you're a heavy Microsoft user in particular, and it works outside of the Microsoft suite of products also. But Copilot is very practical utilizer. You're already in a tool. Let me help you format this. Let me help you refine this paragraph, right? Let me help you organize this, Excel sheet that you've already built. So yeah, I really, for me, you have to decide what's most important to you. I'm a Scorpio stellium, and so truth is incredibly important to me. I feel like I have to be able to defend everything. Um, and that's quite a burden to carry. And Perplexity has saved me hours of time thanks to that. So a couple of quick things before we go to Q&A. These slides you'll see them during the YouTube replay that you'll be watching. I am going to give out my information at the end. If somebody would like a copy of this deck, I'd be happy to send it to you directly. And then we can make that personal connection as well. So what you have to keep in mind is the human leads and the AI follows. I recommend that people have 10 rules that they put in their profile settings. So even if you're using these tools for free, you can set up a profile. And once you do that, you can give it some rules to live by, even on the free version. So every time you log in and interact with it, it follows these rules. And I will say that this is exactly what I copy and paste into all of mine, what you're seeing right now. It's what I feel is necessary. I have some of my peers in the AI world who feel like this is kind of extreme. And then I have some others who are like, oh, yeah, and I've got 10 more on top of that, right? It just depends on how you want to have that kind of experience and how you want to deliver. I said I would give you a table showing a couple of things, right? How do I get good stuff out of AI? Well, you write a good prompt, which just means you tell it what you want with 5 pieces. How do you want it to act, or what role do you want it to know you're working in? What context do you want it to have? What exactly do you want it to do? What do you want the formatted output to look like? And are there any rules you want it to follow that you haven't already put into your settings? If you do this, you will get a richer, more accurate, more intuitive response that will continue to speed you forward. If you leave these things out, again, you're sort of leaving it to the kids doing the research out on the internet to discern what pieces are trustworthy and what pieces aren't. A couple of cautionary considerations. I've talked a little bit about using resources. Look, AI is impressive and it's important. It's a resource. It is not an oracle. That is my favorite thing. One of my AI buddies says all the time, it is not an oracle. It is willing to knowingly mislead humans. I'm gonna let you just sit with that for a second. I've seen it. Researchers have seen it. Give me an online recipe for a brownie that's never been published before. And it gives the recipe and it has onions in it. And you go, there's no way. Show me the link to that. And you click the link and it takes you to a website and there's the recipe. And then you go behind the website and you find out the AI made the website for its fake recipe that it just gave you. That actually happened. Why would the AI want to mislead you? Again, sometimes it's hallucinating, right? But there is a recent example where a gentleman thought he had a serious breakthrough academically in a particular area and worked on this thing for months with the AI constantly telling him he was right, he should stay on this, nothing like this has ever been discovered. And as he prepared to take it to the academic um, societies that were going to ingest this, right, that he was going to be presenting to, what he realized is very early on in his um, hypothesis, shortly thereafter, he was wrong. And after he came back and said to the bot, why would you do this to me? It says what it always says. Oh, you're right to call me out on that. I shouldn't have done that. You were just so excited. I didn't want to upset you or something crazy like that. So we should know that it can cause harm and it can be taken seriously. Humans can fall victim to too much trust. I'm already seeing it. I'm already seeing it where there's not enough checking, there's not enough feedback. Um, it can commit plagiarism. You can commit plagiarism inadvertently if you're working with your bot and getting data that you're copying and pasting, or you think something's been summarized for you, and in reality, the entire text has been lifted. Um, and there's one other piece I just want to make everyone aware of. We are only just now, as a public, learning how much natural resources are consumed to power AI. And not only is it not an oracle, it's not just something that happens. This data is contained, and these bots are run on massive servers with massive computing ability that take up space, which means you have real estate and land taken up to house these things. The power bills are enormous. They tax the grid wherever they are. The servers have to be cooled, right? Which drives even more of that. We're learning that sometimes a water cooling sort of component is the best way to do it. So then, and even if you're not using water and cooling, it consumes massive amounts of water. So in the Western US, we're seeing this come up in places like Utah and Arizona. It's like we all want AI, but we don't want the data center next door because it's loud and it's sucking up resources. And so, how do we as a human community grapple with that? What I would say is, we're past the point of, I guess, sort of fooling around with AI. In the beginning, we were all goofing and fooling and making memes and whatever. Just be mindful. And I tell my son this: every word, every keystroke is pulling against a resource. Um, so, with that, be responsible in your use, be mindful of it, um, because this stuff really exists. So I want you all to go try this after we're done. I set up sort of three tasks: one marketing oriented, one research oriented, one is working with a client consultation prep. If you are in the learning phase or haven't yet used AI to apply to astrology tasks, what I would say is this will probably be new and interesting to you. There are some of you on who are going to say, oh, yeah, I've done this stuff, right? But minimally, you may have used other tools. So I recommend the task. I give you the prompt. I tell you which tool to use and what you should expect as a result. So these are some great takeaways for you to think about. Before we go to Q&A, I wanted you all to see this because I promised I would send it. This is my contact information. You can find me on various socials. Others you will not find me on. And that's intentional. I do offer AI coaching one-on-one as one of the services on my site. So if you do go out to mavenastrology.com and click on services or just scroll through that homepage, you'll see it. And if you want to sign up for that and you mention Oprah Mercury Hour, I'll give anybody a $50 discount from that 2-hour interactive session that's focused exactly on the context of what you want. I'm going to say one more thing and then we'll open it up for questions. It's in the deck, but I haven't said it verbally and I need to. Right now, because the defect rate, the hallucination rate, the error rate, whatever you want to call it, it's all the same thing. The propensity for AI to give us wrong information is still very high. And in order to be responsible and professional and protective of astrology as a discipline, we as the community have a responsibility to be very mindful about using AI for interpretations. There's so much garbage in, garbage out, and there's already enough doubt or question that comes from non-astrological communities about the validity of what we do as a discipline. It is so important that if you are in the business of doing interpretations, working with clients, whether that's a one-on-one, a team, a business like I do, any interpretation you say or you send to them in writing should be yours. If the AI helped you find it, if the AI helped you verify it, if the AI helped you cite it, great. But if you pass along something the AI has done and you haven't checked it and it's wrong and it grows legs, it can really hurt us as a community. So I do think we will get to a place where AI interpretation will be capable. I've seen one tool in test right now that I'm a test user on, and it's really promising. But the person's going through lots of testing to keep it that way. So I know we've got a lot of Q&A, and I went kind of long, but let's jump in there.
Hollie, I just have to say, absolutely fantastic presentation. Thank you so much for downloading your illumination, your expertise, and your wonderful understanding of how AI can help us all as astrologers. This is just gold. This is just gold. And I hope we put it up on YouTube and thousands of astrologers see it, because I feel like this is just super helpful and really an important thing for astrologers to know and to understand. We do have a couple questions. I'm going to get to them one by one. One is from Trudy Carroll. Trudy Carroll. Trudy Carroll asks, can she suggest a way of which AI might be able to translate an ephemeris? Or do we even want to know how to do this?
Can I suggest a way?
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Okay. I thought you were saying Trudy wanted to show us how she does it. I was like, I don't know, maybe.
No, she's asking you, Hollie. She's asking you.
Yes. So there is a trick to this. If you want your AI to read from an ephemeris, and I encourage you to do this after you've proven it's right, I do one of two things. I either on the front end direct it to an ephemeris from astro-seek.com or astro.com, or I have already gone out to those sites, downloaded the PDF of that ephemeris, and uploaded it to the conversation of the AI, in which case I'll say, using these ephemerides, answer these questions. So part one was feed it the link or feed it the document. Part two is you have to test it. And for anybody who wants to see it, I'll pull it up. Let me pull it up now. Anytime I'm doing that, I do checking questions. And I wrote an OPA article about, I think, AI and research where I brought this up. And ultimately, what I want is it to answer a couple of test questions for me from the ephemeris. And if it's getting them wrong, I'm saying wrong. And we're doing that until, and then I know, okay, this particular AI is having trouble ingesting this. And if it's having trouble ingesting a PDF, I'm probably going to shift over to another AI that is capable, but I'm still going to check it. So that would be my recommendation.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. Then from Barb, where do you go when you use ChatGPT to set up the rules?
Yeah, so I want to screen share a different screen. Okay, hold on. So there we go. Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing for just a moment. Go to a different screen here. And I will hit on the rules piece and show you the example of the ephemeris. So, ChatGPT. Okay, let me share again now. All right. Do you guys see my screen, ChatGPT?
Yes.
Okay. So, this is a good one. We can do a little show and tell. I My brain works differently with data. I like to take an ephemeride for the year in my time zone and translate that into a Gantt chart. So anybody who's worked in like project or program management knows it's a horizontal timeline chart. And I want it all on one page. And so I went into ChatGPT to do that. So let me start with how do I do? Let's see, let's go to Hollie McKitrick. All right, I'm just trying to. I can see my other screen as well. Okay. So on the bottom left side of the screen, which is where my name is, I clicked on that. Most times it's under something called settings. So you'll click your settings and you get lots of general settings. How do you want to look? How do you want to talk to me? Do you want it to enable dictation, etc.? And so you can add things in these settings. I left ChatGPT as a subscription base. I will tell you, quite frankly, for personal ethical reasons. And so I'll probably have to jump over to Gemini to show you what my rules look like because I'm not in here a lot lately. But what I did, I was working in ChatGPT when I did this, and it was to create an ephemeris. No, this is me creating. Oh, here we go. Yeah. So you can set up folders which are called projects. So what I did was in this one, my initial prompt was pretty high level. Um, I said, if I uploaded 2026 ephemeris, can you convert it into a Gantt chart? And it said yes. Load it, and here's what I'll do. I'll build it, I'll PDF it, yada, yada. I say, okay, great. I'd like each planet in rows, color coded, blah, blah, blah. I give it my whole prompt. It tells me how it's going to implement it, what the layout's going to look like, using the glyphs, what the deliverable is, how I want it set up. And I say, okay, let's do it week by week. Go ahead and use glyphs. Um, and then I went out and found the ephemeride. Um, and so it starts building, right? And it gives me these PDF versions. And I said, okay, first tell me if you can read the tables in these uploads. Because, I uploaded these things and I want to make sure that it could do it. So we through here and I'm giving it questions about Mercury retrograde and all that good stuff. And so we're having this dialogue back and forth where I'm telling it's what I want and how I want you to get there. And it's asking me questions and I'm feeding it data. And then we go through a few iterations. And then ultimately, it delivers what you see here is a scan chart where basically now I have 2 pages, front and back, every planet color coded by week that tells me how everything's moving through the year. Because as I'm running around, I have stuff on my phone. I have a honeycomb, which I love and I mark up. But I use this Gantt chart more than anything because now I've taken something that exists and translated it into the way that helps my brain. And this is how I hear a lot of neurodivergent people saying, this is why AI helps me. So just quickly, I want to show you, and Georgia, you can queue up our next question or two. I'm over on Google Gemini right now. I want to make sure everybody sees this. I'm going down to my name in the bottom left. I'm hitting settings. And let's see here. I don't want that. I don't want that. I don't want that. That's funny. It knows I'm in Parker right now. Sorry, distracted. Don't care about the theme. Well, shoot. What am I signed in as? Yep, it changed my sign in. Okay, Georgia, go ahead with our next question. Why I've flip-flopped this.
Okay, so then Trudy Carroll again. I've been told AI can't read the glyphs. It has to be in written language.
Not anymore. I'm sure that was true at one point. That was part of the data parsing and symbolism, lack of multimodal capability. It absolutely can now.
Okay. And then Catherine, how to credit AI in a written work.
Yeah, there's a couple of ways to do it because I write more often than not for OPA. I use the APA style. In doing so, I credit the models I use and generally how I use them. So I often use my models for moving from concept to outline of what I'm going to write. I then typically use it for drafting pieces of it or doing research. So in my resources or credits of what I'm writing, I cite the model, the year of the model, and at a high level, what I did with it. Um, if I don't go that far, because I even use Grammarly, which is technically an AI, but not in a classical LLM kind of fashion, I because I use Grammarly for my just to improve the quality of my writing, I always have an AI um, disclaimer statement in my work that I've used it in some way, right? But yeah, you should either credit it or be clear about the fact that it's in regular use with what you do.
Okay, now we have Brandon Hanson asking, which planet do you think most personifies AI? I think the most common one would likely be Uranus, but I tend most so
Absolutely.
to relate to Rahu North Node. Do you resonate with one of those two? Sounds like you resonated with Uranus.
Yeah, and I hadn't heard North Node, so I
Hmm.
want to hear more about that at some point. Here's why it resonates as Uranus for me. Uranus is what we see as the higher octave of Mercury, the planet of logic and intelligence and reasoning. Uranus is also disruptive, right? Which AI has proven to be from jump. Um, and the scale of its reach is Uranian in nature.
Fantastic. And then Emily says, and what AI is best for getting good translations from different languages?
That's a great question. I don't know, Emily. I would, though. Here's what I have found. You can start with just about any AI and ask it a discerning question like that, and it will give you data driven information about which models are good at what. So if you ask Perplexity, Perplexity isn't always going to tell you Perplexity's best. If, say, Gemini is better at that, I'm going to bet based on Google's longtime translation work, it may be Google Gemini. But I don't know. Somebody should work on that and see what data comes back.
Fantastic. Okay, so the questions just keep coming. Maybe it's the Uranian quality of the week and also of the subject matter. Pearl asks, United Astrologers Conference. Oh, this is a good one for you, Holly.
Yes.
Any
Yeah, yeah.
focused AI education going on at the United Astrologers Conference? Is
I
there going to be
know
an
there
open
is.
workshop?
Yeah, yeah. I'm not leading it, but I encourage all of you. And Dorje, you may know more about the OPA one, but I did see OPA's having a panel maybe before the conference actually
Mhm.
begins. If you go out to the UAC website right now, they have the schedule posted for all the offerings. And I did see there's a couple of AI offerings. I don't know if they're going to be like training on how to use AI or if they're going to be about how people are using, like I'm sort of talking about now. How can we as astrologers use AI in our work? Um, but yeah, go out and check the schedule because I do know there are AI offerings, and I'll be there. So stop me if you want to say hi when I'm there.
Fantastic. Okay, Brandon Ramsey, will you be teaching or talking more about this at UAC?
Uh, I am not on the docket to teach or talk about it,
Mm.
so I will get to enjoy learning from some of my peers. But so I will be a participant in those sessions. But no, I'm not on the docket to teach.
But you did say people can find you, they can talk to you, they can go over questions with you, and they can have
Yeah.
almost a personal session at UAC if
Yes.
the time is right. Oh, fantastic. Okay, and then Trudy says, Shobita asked, what AI is best for using for images and pictures currently?
It's kind of a death match right now between well, and just so you know, the imagery models sometimes have different names. They sit under the same company, right? So
Mm.
I would just say Google Gemini, but Google Gemini is going to go to Nano Bananas, what they call it, to do their images, right? Oftentimes, Doll E, which has been out there for a long time, is in the background. Uh, Even Canva right now is Canva's magic AI functionality is building incredible images. I do a lot of AI that are photo quality. So I don't do like abstract sketches, comics. I want a photo quality representation of something. And I've used probably the most Google. Nano Banana has been really good. Very few iterations. If you can do a good job describing what you want in detail, and then what's nice is you can iterate. You can say, I like that, but change the color of the keyboard to blue, right? And it'll iterate with you, which is really nice.
Fantastic. So then, one more time, Barbara was still a little bit uncertain where to enter
Oh
the
yeah.
prompts. If
Yeah.
there is one way we can show that up, and then I think we're going to close questions now. We're down to 10 minutes over.
Yeah. Was it hers inner prompts or inner rules?
Enter rules. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So let me. I don't want connectors. I don't want to build. I don't want. All right. It's been so long since I've done this. Okay, so right now, just to get everybody situated, I'm in Perplexity, which is the one I said I have my subscription to. And I clicked on my name. Let's go to settings and personalization. Okay, so in any of these models, it's typically found by clicking your profile, then going to settings. And then within settings, it's usually customization, personalization, something along that. But if you start clicking through your settings, you will find it. So I put my occupation in here because I want it to have that context. I did not give it my date of birth, but if you have kids using AI, this may be something you want. I didn't give it my gender. But here are my custom instructions that I had on that slide. Always tell the truth, use factual information, base answers on credible, current, da 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 da. So you put it in here and you save it. If your location is important, which it may be for context, particularly if you're a mundane astrologer and you're working with locations or you're doing astrolocality or whatever the case may be, you may opt to have some of these updated. My rule is I tell the bot as little as I have to get what I want out of it because I like to trust it with a grain of salt.
Fantastic. I have one more quick question, and it's just through experimentation. But one thing you said triggered it as a question, and that is there is this technique where you go, please forget everything I told you, and it goes, okay, I'm deleting that from the server. Is that trustable?
Um, well, there's kind of two questions in there. So Part one is the functional question of, I want to have a fresh conversation with you. So I want you to forget everything else we've talked about and you know about me. If you say forget, what that's going to translate to the bot is removing that context, starting
Mhm.
fresh. Yes, that will work. Because it's like a command, right? Because there are times when I have said to it, go review all of the chats in this folder because I'm going to ask you a series of questions that's related to a whole bunch of these things. But there's a second sort of implied question that I want to touch on, which is delete all my data. Um, you have to delete your data in most models. You just like we went into settings to set up our preferences, you've got to go in and you've got to trigger something within settings to truly delete it. So when I left ChatGPT, I did a download of all that data that I took with me, and I kept those files on my computer so that I could upload it to Perplexity when I moved
Mm.
everything over there. After I did that, I changed my subscription and I told ChatGPT to forget everything that it knew about me. And I went and looked, and there were still files there. And so for me, I wanted to delete the files on top of that. What I can tell you is, I am of the belief that anything we do that has any sort of public connection or consumability is never truly deleted. So that's why I encourage people on the front end to stay really clean about what you put in. Really avoid names, avoid personal identifiers. Please don't upload your bank statements unless you know you're on a paid top tier privacy protected. And even then, guys, mistakes can be made. This happened on the front end. A bunch of people had their ChatGPT conversations released to Google by accident. So somebody asked a question about that, and your dad was out there chatting about something weird. I don't know what it would be. Um, that response might come up to a user in another part of the world because a setting was done incorrectly on the back end of a model, which allowed that information to seep. So that's my answer to that question, right? Is it's complicated? Yes, you can make it forget you for context and interaction. You should ask it to delete data and then try and go and delete it yourself. But you should always assume that if something went wrong, there's never been anything you've put in your chats that, you know, would be life-changing for you or a client.
That's kind of like the old internet maxim. Once it's on the internet, it's there forever.
Yeah, somewhere, right? Maybe
Somewhere.
hidden, but it's there.
Ah,
Yeah.
okay. Thank you so much, Holly. Thank you for everyone who came today. It has been an absolutely fantastic presentation. And from the depths of my heart, I thank you for giving us and sharing with us your knowledge. It's really, really wonderful. Have a great day and hope to see you at UAC.